Hey, everybody, this is Dave Cooper, and I am sitting with Nick Borgina from Isaac. And why are we sitting together? Well, guess what? Shipbuilding and industrialized construction have a lot in common. And that's how we met. And that's why Isaac is making a push into the industrialized construction space. And we're going to talk all about it right now. Nick, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
Nick, I think it's super exciting because we always talk about how our industry lacks, data, lacks automation, lacks software. I mean, everything in between. And this is something that you and your team at Isaac have been doing for a long, long time, not just in the shipbuilding industry, but in manufacturing all across the globe in different industries. So I look forward to this conversation. But first, we want to know everything about you, Nick. In fact, we want to know everything from the moment you were born to this very moment in time. Don't leave out any of the good stuff from the hospital, or we may have your wife on the show. And it could get quite embarrassing, but the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Thanks, Dave. Okay, I'll just try to focus on the more important bits. But I was born and raised in Toronto, and I think all through my childhood, had a interest in sort of engineering related activities. So loved taking engines apart, go-karts, dirt bikes, building things. I excelled in math and science. And so just kind of followed that curve. And then at one point in high school thought, okay, I loved Formula One and cars. And so I thought, I want to be a engine designer for Ferrari or some big automaker, preferably one that was represented in Formula One. But you know what, in school studying engineering, I realized that most of the profession was pretty introverted, and I just really enjoyed working with people, discussion. I really enjoyed variety, and so I was a bit worried that I might end up at an automaker designing a door handle for a really long period of time, and so wanted to pursue something different. And then I just stumbled across Isaac at the time. We were Newton, and applied, joined, went through a rigorous process, got spit out the other end of it, and the rest was history. So
yeah. Nick, tell me a little bit about what your role is at Isaac today, like where you started at Isaac and where you are today.
Yeah, so I started entry level as a consultant in 2008. Today I'm a managing partner, one of three. So, and we don't have a CEO per se. So essentially, there's three of us managing partners that collectively form the role of the CEO for the company.
Great. And Isaac, traditionally has been focused on what industries?
So we started predominantly in manufacturing, a lot of fast-moving consumer goods or consumer packaged goods, and also a lot of industrial manufacturing as well. And then it's just sort of branched from there. So got more into advanced manufacturing, industrials, so like aerospace as an example, and started to get into healthcare as well. So this was probably about 20 years ago as we started to emerge. And then, I'd say these days in advanced manufacturing and low volume manufacturing, big presence in shipbuilding. We've worked in aerospace, nuclear power plants, a lot in automotive. And also in healthcare, food manufacturing is really big for us. So it's kind of just all sprouted from there, but all different industries these days.
So industrialized construction and advanced manufacturing, why are you now focused on this space?
So advanced manufacturing for us, I think it was just kind of a natural evolution to get there. Just the way that our clients kind of pulled us over time. But construction in particular has been really interesting for us because obviously it's a massive industry. But from what we've seen and heard, a lot of innovation is happening right now. And it's something that it's such an old industry, and things have been more or less the same for many, many years. But more recently now, things are actually starting to shake up, and you see offsite construction, you see industrialized construction, you see prefab and modular and all the AI influencing designs. And so that's really exciting to us to get a part of how can we accelerate some of that innovation that's happening.
Now, all those things that you mentioned, including AI, I mean, that's something that you're already very well versed in. And does it shock you when I say that our industry is very new at all those things?
You know what? It did the first times I heard it. I've heard it a few times
Yeah, yeah.
since you said it now. So it doesn't shock me this time, but it did shock me originally because it for such large scale projects and so much investment being made, I probably would have imagined that let's say the innovation was a little more aggressive. But it sounds like it's on that curve now and it's starting to come up.
So your previous experience at Isaac and all the other industries, can you give us some highlights on how that applies to, offsite construction, industrialized construction, modern methods of construction, whatever you want to name it, prefab, modular, you were going through them as well. But how does that experience from what you guys are looking at as a team? You've done your research, and now you're starting to make inroads and bringing all that knowledge here. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about how that experience plays a role in the success of what you can bring to this industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the bottom line of it, I imagine there's similar goals. Like, in shipbuilding, cost and schedule adherence are the primary goals and can be very difficult on large scale programs, especially when you're building, a first or a second of class vessel. And I think buildings and construction can often be the same as well, where you might be building one hospital or something like that. And so you're not getting into a rhythm of building 100 of them and really dialing in your processes. But it sounds like there are a lot of opportunities in this sort of offsite construction space for that repetition, and I think that's where we can bring in a lot of expertise. Where we've been experts in manufacturing for 20 years. We've seen what works well, what doesn't, how to get the machines running faster, how to reduce downtimes, how to reduce rework, how to reduce waste, all that type of stuff. And I think as the construction industry starts to ramp up in the manufacturing setting, in that through industrialized construction, I feel like we could really help to accelerate the ramp up period in those sites. Bring the experience that we've had in 20 years in working with manufacturers who had been in business for 100 years to a construction firm or a company who maybe they're only 5 years into their offsite industrialized construction or prefab.
Sure, sure. Well, it's probably always easier to teach a new dog new tricks versus than an old dog new tricks, right? And
Right, right.
that's how we've always done it, or we've tried it that way. You hear that a lot in this industry, and I'm sure you hear it in other industries as well. One of the things that you talked about was data. When we were talking, and how important is data when it comes to manufacturing and the analytics that come along with that data? Because again, that's something brand new to the industrialized construction space that we're now starting to see people really, grasp onto and understand and use it like the rest of the manufacturing world has done for centuries.
Right. No, right on, David. Yeah, that is really important. What we find is often, let's just take a typical generic factory setting. Productivity can be a challenge, or efficiency can be a challenge, or throughput. But there's a lot of debate often as to what the biggest opportunities for improvement actually are, and what's causing those lacks of efficiency or productivity, etc. And often we find that some of the biggest opportunities actually get missed because they were kind of hidden. And so for us, data really should guide the prioritization and the sort of planning efforts on what should we go after as a business to improve. And so we're really big on making sure that we've set up the right data capture systems, and we can use the facts from the data to inform, okay, how much better can we get on this line? How much more throughput can we drive? How much more efficiency can we drive? What are the top losses as we've measured with the data that are driving that efficiency gap? What can we do about those losses? And then we build up a plan that says, okay, if we can recover this much of this loss and this much of this loss, and we can do all that over, whatever period of time, 6 months, then we could bring the efficiency from here to here, and then we go out and go and execute that.
So here I am, Nick. I'm a manufacturer, right? And I'm calling Nick and his team, and I'm saying, Nick, we've been doing this for the last 15, 20 years, and that all sounds really complicated to me. Walk me through what the steps are. And I say, all right, well, I'm gonna talk to the Isaac team. I want to bring them in. How do I get to the point if I'm not collecting data? How do I get to the point where I'm collecting data? What is that process, and how do you come in and assist us in getting somewhere we've never been?
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of options. We kind of figure out together what approach fits best. But I'd say the easier approach would be we would come in, we would do some studies, we would see there might still be some data that's captured, but even if there's none, we can start from studies and we can just see, okay, what did you ship at the end of the month or the end of the week or whatever. So we could kind of see what left the factory. Um, but we could do some studies, and then we could, for a period of a couple weeks, just manually capture that data and then see what that's telling us. And then we could start to act on that, as long as we feel like that period is roughly representative of some of the other weeks in the year. And alternatively, we could go even more advanced than that. Like, we come in with our suitcases and our data collection systems, and within a day or two, we could actually just set up automated data capture so that there is live data capture in the facility at that point. And then we can start to actually track data for a period of time. It could be up to a month, and then we can start to use a bigger sample size of data to inform our improvement plans.
All right. So you got me there. So you don't, all right. You're going to come in with your own data collection devices, no matter what the manufacturing facility is, no matter what the level of manufacturing is. I mean, because it could be very hands-on in some of these factories, building indoors, so to speak. But you guys actually have equipment and the processes to come in and just set up and say, hey, we're going to sit here for a couple weeks or a week, and we're going to measure everything and capture everything we can. Explain that to me, and then I want to know a little bit about what these systems look like.
Yeah, definitely. So we have tools for many lines and options. I wouldn't say every, but most, like, over the years, because it's quite labor intensive for us to have a whole team, maybe 5 people, just manually capturing data for weeks. We've built up data systems and partnered with different technology providers to build up this tool set so that we can actually just set up these automated data capture systems. So what that looks like, one of the most common ones, I'll just give a simple example, would be setting up photo eyes at different parts in the line. So we could just see when something passes the photo eye, and then that's just counting in the background. And then we'll have tablets that are tracking the speed that's triggered by the photo eyes. And then if it senses that the line is down, the product hasn't passed in a period of time, then it'll prompt the user to put a reason for, okay, it's recorded a certain amount of downtime. What was the reason? That type of thing. So we have some user interfaces to just make it really easy for people to capture losses through the day. But yeah, if it's a more automated line, we could actually just plug into, another example would be plugging into the PLC, and we could actually just read what's happening in the PLC, and that'll tell us, when a cycle is complete, or how fast it's running through the code, that type of thing.
So in our industry, Nick, and nothing ever talks to something else, right? So when we look at manufacturing in the offsite space, the manufacturers of the automation or the equipment typically want to own the software, and that software only works with their systems. Now we're starting to see other, manufacturers of, systems to be used, whether it's robots, whether it's, wood cutting systems or, metal cutting systems, that you can plug and play. How do you do that? How do you plug into somebody else's system, especially if it's a proprietary system to the company that made that equipment?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I don't even know if I know the technical answer to that. Like, we've got some really smart data geeks. We have a sort of technology group, about 10 people in it, and yeah, they work with the local teams or the OEM to figure out the safe way to do it. So yeah, I don't even think I could explain exactly how we do it, but yeah, they find a way
To do it. Well, it makes sense to me, right? I mean, you already work, shipbuilding, manufacturing of health, goods, food, whatever the case is. I'm sure everybody has different systems. So my guess is you guys probably have come up with a way to start doing that. And you're right, it's well above my pay grade.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So, what are you seeing as, as your team has discussed coming into the space and bringing all that knowledge? Like, what is your team seeing as some of the challenges in industrialized construction? And we just hit on quite a few of them, actually.
Yeah, I mean, from the conversations that I've had, it seems like the challenge is similar to a number of other industries in North America, which is how do we improve productivity,
Right.
and how do we get more competitive with overseas, and make things more affordable and all that type of stuff. And so I think that's pretty similar to what we've seen in a number of different industries, and certainly in shipbuilding. The challenge is how do we bring the cost down? How do we
Right.
accelerate the schedule? Of multi-year programs, that type of thing. So I think the challenges are quite the same. Maybe even a bit more specific. More and more, I see labor shortages of skilled trades, and once upon a time. When we were talking about increasing throughput, it could be as easy as, oh, well, we'll just go to the union halls and just, bring in more people. But these days, that's less and less available, and there's a lot of different manufacturing, construction, etc. That's all competing for the same skilled trades, and so it really drives this need for efficiency.
Yeah, for
and,
sure.
and, and that's where I think our kind of passion comes in, and that's what our business is all about. How do we work with the business to better understand what are the opportunities for improvement, quantify those with data and facts, and then collaboratively come up with a plan with the local team for how we're going to go and recover that improvement together.
So, are there common problems that you see across all industries and manufacturing? And is there any quick tips or tricks that you could give those watching today that where they should start looking?
I'm always careful about that because every company is a bit different for sure. But I certainly can say some of the common themes. But I know that like there really isn't anything that's universally true. I think in the sort of slower moving or lower volume manufacturing, which could be shipbuilding or specialty automotive or industrialized construction, um, what I've seen as a common theme is often uh, the skilled trades could get sort of blamed for the productivity element if it's not where we want it to be. And I think it's sometimes easy to do that because that's where the product's actually coming together. And if the product isn't together, as fast as we had hoped it would be, it's easy to say, oh well, it's the people who are working on it right now
Right.
is the reason. But actually, in our experience, a lot more of the reasons are upstream. And so when we do our studies and we even if we were to shadow the skilled trades, we'd find often the materials that they needed weren't available or weren't in the right place. The drawings weren't as clear as they could have been, or there was errors on the drawings. There was emergent change in the program, and so all of a sudden they're doing rework. There's all these upstream problems that are actually affecting the productivity down on the shop floor. So I think that's one thing where we're always careful to say, let's not just assume we know where the problem is. Let's go and actually study it, and then we could go and figure out exactly where in the whole process chain that improvement is needed. And often it is multiple areas. But I would say one theme is it's more often upstream than it is right on the shop floor.
Any thoughts on those upstream problems and how the value chain works in manufacturing and construction?
So for us, it all starts with that data collection. So what we would do is often shadow. First, we'd want to understand really what's the bottleneck of the operation. Let's just simplify it and say one particular skilled trade is really limited. There's a labor shortage in that trade, and so we know we really need the productivity of this trade to be as high as possible because we can't just add more people to it. It's difficult to find these people. So let's just
Right.
take that kind of an example. We would shadow those team members through the day and then understand how much of their day is spent actually progressing the job, tool in hand. We'd call that green time. How much of the day is doing things that were entirely required and necessary, but wasn't actually really progressing the job. So that could be signing off on paperwork or having an inspection done on the product, that type of thing. And then so we call that amber time. And then how much of the day was unnecessary and not actually progressing the job. So that would be delays due to missing materials or, errors in the drawing or something like that. So those didn't need to happen. And we would categorize that as red time. And so we would we would perform that study, we'd categorize the time, and then we'd see how much opportunity is there to eliminate that red time, and how much opportunity is there to reduce some of that amber time, because it's necessary, but it's not actually progressing the job, so we want to shrink it. And then by doing that, it allows us to enlarge the green time. So, and then what we would understand is what were the top reasons for that red time or for that amber time, and trace it upstream. And so, if it was that, let's say there was errors in the drawings or ambiguities in the drawings, we would start to categorize those different reasons, take a count, through the day, build up that data capture, and then we would start to say, okay, well, here's some of the failure modes we're seeing. Oh, actually, we're missing dimensions often. Okay, well, how can we allow the data to inform what needs to happen? Well, is it the same engineers are forgetting to mark up the dimensions on the drawings, or is it scattered? Is it everybody's forgetting? And we would just start to build up that data to say, okay, what needs to change? Is it a specific person? Is it a process? Is it a system? And kind of go upstream to go and make those changes.
Sure. Being a consultant in the industry, right, and being a manufacturer in the industry, everybody understands that there's a cost associated with hiring a consultant. And one of the things that we spoke about, off camera a while ago, is you guys have a value proposition of how you work with companies that is much different than the regular consultants that we've talked to and have worked with on the show or had on the show in the past. How does somebody, one, get started with you? What are the costs involved with that? And, honestly, like, how does Isaac get paid?
Okay, so the way that we get paid is once we've actually delivered results for our clients, then we would invoice sort of payments associated with those savings. So we call it like milestone-based payment approach. And so if we promised a client that we would save $2 million, then once a quarter of those savings have come through to their bottom line, then a quarter of our fees would get invoiced. And once a half of the results that we promised them have come through, then a half of our fees will come through. So we kind of maintain it like that. So we only get paid when the results have actually come through to our client. And if we don't actually hit the results that we promised, then we're not going to get the fees that we intended for that project either.
All right. So let me just reiterate this. You're saying that there basically is zero risk for a client because you're going to, before you even start, say, this is the value we think we can bring. This is the savings we think we can get you based on what we did up front in our research. And we're willing to put our money where our mouth is and not get paid until you start seeing money in your bank.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And and that actually kind of gets to the other question that you asked as well. How do we get started? So all of this would start with, first, we want to understand what's the business trying to accomplish. Are they trying to improve profit margin? Are they trying to accelerate the build schedule of a big program, something like that? And then what we're going to do is a diagnostic where we could see how much improvement in that goal do we think is possible, and how long would it take, and what would need to be true. And then we would propose our role in driving that improvement and what that would cost. And so upfront, before we get into the actual, higher cost improvement project, we would have the business case for them, which says, okay, we think, X million in savings are possible, or X million in additional profit. And here's what it would cost you. And then we'll propose this sort of milestone-based payment schedule that's associated with those results. And generally, maybe just as a frame of reference for organizations, we target 3 to 6% of revenue as additional profit, as additional EBITDA.
On top of what you're already thinking you're going to save?
Well, that would be what we think we'd save. So let's just take, let's say it's a 100 million revenue business. We would expect to be adding 3 to 6 million in profit to their bottom line. And then in terms of our fees, we generally try to target at least a 2-to-1 12-month payback. So in that scenario, let's say it's a $100 million revenue business, and let's say it's on the upper end, so we're targeting about 6 million in savings for them, or additional profit for them. Then our fees would be, let's say, 3 million or less. And it depends on the application, depends on the industry. But generally that 2-to-1 or better 12-month ROI is kind of what we're looking for our projects.
That's impressive. I mean, honestly, I mean, those are real numbers, to a company's bottom line. That makes for a really good Christmas party. That's really
Yeah.
so, Nick, what haven't we covered yet? Is there anything else that you want to add that the Isaac team is bringing to the table, or anything personally that you want to add?
Yeah, I think maybe one thing is, when should a business consider getting external help? Um, and I think for me, there's some scenarios where you might just want a fresh set of eyes to assess, even if things are going all right, to assess, how much further opportunity for improvement is there. So there's probably never a bad time, let's say, but I'd say the best time to get that external challenge is if there's targets that have been set for the organization that aren't being hit. And rather than just keep trying, whether it's a margin target, or whether it's a schedule adherence target, or whatever it is, rather than just keep trying and keep failing, I think at some point businesses should say, you know what, let's get a third party view at this, and let's see, have we set the right target? Is the target possible? What would need to be true to achieve it? And in some cases, getting that external help can not only accelerate the accomplishment of that target, but in a lot of cases, it could actually accelerate the ownership and buy-in of improvement within the organization, because we build that into our projects as well. How do we actually create a culture of continuous improvement and innovation within that business as well? So,
Nick, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate this. I appreciate the fact that you guys are going to put your money where your mouth is to help our industry move forward. I think that's a big win. I also think, coming from the ship manufacturing industry, there's a lot of similarities that have been discussed recently on how we could learn some lessons there. I think that's very powerful as well. So, Nick, I appreciate you. Nick Borgina, Isaac team. You guys want to check them out? Make sure you go and ask for Nick, or any one of the team. I'm sure can help you there. Nick, you stay right there. Everybody else, I'm Dave Cooper. Thanks for watching.